What's up, everyone? Welcome to the March 4th edition of DraftKings Tournament Plays presented by PrizePicks. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. And as a reminder, you get one free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum when you sign up and make a deposit at PrizePicks. Be sure to use the code Awesemo to receive a 100% first deposit bonus up to $100. Tonight, we're going to take a look at 5 of the top tournament options on DraftKings. We have a 9-game slate. We do have a lot of injury news pending right now. This is the first day in I think the first day this week, really, that we've had a lot of injury news that we're still waiting on. So as always, be sure to tune into the deeper dive and live before lock in the 2 hours preceding tip on the Awesemo YouTube channel. Going to be pretty important to watch that tonight. Get more up-to-date information on injury news, updated ownership projections, player projections, and all of that as we get closer to lock. But for now, we're going to take a look at 5 of the top tournament options on DraftKings as things currently stand. Coming in at number 5, Buddy Hield, $7,400. He has shooting guard and small forward eligibility. He's projected for about 5% ownership with an 8% chance of being in the optimal lineup. Hield has a favorable matchup against the Detroit Pistons. Indiana has a healthy 115 implied total here. And Hield has just been playing huge minutes for Indiana since the trade from the Sacramento Kings. That hasn't changed with Malcolm Brogdon returning to the lineup. And Hield's production shouldn't take much of a hit with Brogdon in there either, because it's not like Hield really relies on being a high usage guy. He's kind of around 21, 22% with or without Brogdon, and he's playing a lot of minutes one way or the other. So he still has a high ceiling. His price tag is pretty fair now, given, he's averaged about 0.89 DraftKings points per minute since joining Indiana, and he's likely to give you 37 or 38 minutes. But if he gets hot from 3, he can still light up this price tag at pretty low ownership. Number 4, Alec Burks, $5,300 point guard, shooting guard eligibility, 6% projected ownership, 8% chance of being in the optimal lineup. Burks has a difficult matchup tonight against the Phoenix Suns. Burks also isn't a great fantasy producer. He's averaged 0.87 DraftKings points per minute without either one of Kemba Walker or Derrick Rose on the floor this year. He's averaged around 0.8 DraftKings points per minute in his starts without Kemba. But he's also likely to play 34 or 35 minutes at $5,300. Burks is the type of player that I absolutely hate putting into lineups when he's popular, because typically he just doesn't do a whole lot when he's on the floor. He's not a high usage guy. He doesn't do a whole lot in the way of peripherals. But at the same time, you're talking about a $5,300 option at low ownership that's likely to be on the floor for 34 to 36 minutes. He's still going to have his share of good games. And so I do like trying to get to those guys on slates where they are lower owned. Number three, Tyrese Halliburton, $8,700. Going back to that favorable spot against the Detroit Pistons, I think that Halliburton is overpriced here at $8,700, but there's plenty of value on this slate, and most likely going to be more opening up, or at least possibly more opening up between now and lock. So I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue to have an overpay or two in your lineups. In a situation where you can pay up to be contrarian. That's how I view Halliburton here. Only projected for 6% ownership, 9% chance of being in the optimal lineup. Halliburton has averaged 1.16 DraftKings points per minute since joining Indiana, 1.13 DraftKings points per minute in the games that Malcolm Brogdon has been active. He still has nearly a 32% assist percentage in those games, about an 18% usage rate, and he's still likely to give you around 36 minutes. Halliburton is just a very good player that, even though he's a little bit overpriced for Brogdon to be back, he still has a massive ceiling at low ownership on a slate where you can kind of do whatever you want as far as salary goes in your lineups. Number 2, Mikal Bridges, $6,200, taking on the New York Knicks. He has shooting guard and small forward eligibility, which we know is really useful. He's projected for about 7% ownership with a 10% chance of being in the optimal lineup. Bridges is very similar. The way I view Bridges is very similar to the way that I described Alec Burks a minute ago, in that he's not a very good point per minute fantasy producer. He doesn't really benefit even with Devin Booker and Chris Paul out. Going back to the start of last season, Bridges has averaged 0.76 DraftKings points per minute overall. In the minutes he's played without either of Booker or Paul on the floor, Bridges has averaged 0.78 DraftKings points per minute. So he's not someone that you're pointing to and saying, oh, I think this guy's going to take on a lot more usage, or I think this guy's going to run the offense and have a bigger role as a playmaker. That's not the case with Bridges, but everyone's aware of that. And that's why you see ownership flocking to guys like Cameron Payne and Landry Shamet and DeAndre Ayton, and not so much to Mikal Bridges. At the same time, he's still going to play huge minutes here. And anytime someone's on the floor for 38 to 40 minutes, they're certainly capable of having big games. And when you take out Chris Paul and Devin Booker, even though on average Bridges isn't going to see a huge bump, it does make it a little bit easier for him to have a ceiling game where he is more involved offensively on one given night. So at low ownership, even though I don't think on average he gets a big bump from those guys being out, I do like taking some shots here and hoping that, maybe he does happen to step up tonight at low ownership against the Knicks. Number one, Ish Smith, $4,000 point guard, projected for 7% ownership with an 11% chance of being in the optimal lineup. Smith has been more productive with the Wizards since coming over from Charlotte. That is something that I expect to continue because when he was playing in Charlotte, they just had more high usage guys, more guys that can handle the ball, regardless of, if he was coming off the bench or who he was on the floor with. In Washington, that's not really the case. And he's averaged 1.04 DraftKings points per minute in 155 minutes since joining the Wizards. He has a 20.9% usage rate and a very healthy 34.9% assist percentage, which is actually the highest on the team this year. The only issue with Smith is, how many minutes is he going to play? He's playing behind Howell Neto off the bench. So typically you're looking at 21, 22 minutes, which isn't really going to get it done all that frequently, even at 4K, especially on a slate like this where you do have plenty of value. Where the real interest in Smith lies, though, is that if he's playing well, he can pick up more minutes. Last game, you saw him split 24-24 with Neto, but we've also had an instance or two where Neto ends up only playing around 21 or 22 minutes, and Smith is the one that gets 27 or 28. In cases like that, you're getting someone at low ownership that is likely to be a very, very good value option. So to recap, the top 5 tournament options on DraftKings as things currently stand: number 5, Buddy Hield; number 4, Alec Burks; number 3, Tyrese Halliburton; number 2, Mikal Bridges; and number 1, Ish Smith.